my computer is about to like melt a hole through my wall, and I open it like, yes, it finally did it, and it's like nothing like what it said.
Why is this just like a weird mixtape of like Eminem and like Barnyard Animals? That's not the new Dave Matthews Band album.
The Joystick Show. The Joystick Show.
Aloha and welcome to the Joystick Show, a podcast where three friends from high school in Hawaii get together to chat about the latest things we've watched, read, and played that are bringing us joy. And I am Thomas, one of the co-hosts tonight. I'm also joined by Drake.
What's happening?
And tonight we have a very special spotlight guest. He reached out on the Reddits, as one does these days, and just came in with a fantastic amount of experience and hosts numerous podcasts. We have Alex Marcus, the director of podcasting at the Pop Break. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here.
Very nice. Thanks. Yeah, like I said, you do so many different podcasts. Let me just kind of ramble off a few here. We have TV Break. We've got Bill versus the MCU. We've got Saturday Morning Adventures. Which one is your favorite?
Oh boy. Well, it's tough to pick favorites.
Right.
But I'll say the one that I definitely spent the most time on over the last 2 years is Bill versus the MCU, because that's a rewatch podcast and we rewatch way too much stuff for every episode and then record way too long episodes. So that definitely is the most time consuming of all of them.
There you go. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's
Are we
also
missing
the
one? Are you also on Cinema Joe's?
So Cinema Joe's is no longer active. I did that for 6 years with two of my
Damn.
close friends, Justin Mancini and Noah France. But it is currently inactive. So
Oh, dang.
Well, it sounds like you
Okay.
have a lot of MCU experience. And so our first question is a fun one. The question goes like this. If Kevin Feige called you and says you can add any character to the next Avengers movie, which character would you pick? And if you had a casting person for it, who would it be?
okay, well, on Socially Distance, which is a Pop Break podcast that I frequently guest on, we just did our X-Men fantasy casting episode. So I have all the X-Men on the brain, and I would say the X-Men casting that I would want to see most is Giancarlo Esposito as Charles Xavier, and I would like to have him come on the next Avengers movie.
Dang.
Dang.
There
That's a
you
good
go.
one.
It's funny. We talked about that a few weeks ago, and we were like, I mean, it would be amazing. I love Giancarlo Esposito. I got to see him at LA Comic Con, and he is a true fan at heart. Like, he loves all the things he's in. I think he would crush that role. Do you think the general public would be like, he's not Jewish, or not Jewish, or I don't know. I guess maybe
Professor
white.
X is not
They
Jewish
probably-
either, so
No,
they'll
that's
fit
true.
perfectly.
And then Magneto. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, right. Yeah.
But you thought Magneto because Giancarlo Esposito is constantly cast as villains. And
True.
he's excellent as a villain. Of course, Breaking Bad, Gus Fring, iconic villain.
So
But
good.
the thing that I get frustrated by is that he's capable of doing so much more than that. And I feel like we've gotten very lazy in Hollywood, me being in Hollywood, not at all. And I
You
think
in
we're just,
the- in
we're
your
just
in your
constantly
dreams,
casting
yes.
him because we know, okay, he's good at being a villain, so he's gonna crush this role. So he's like collecting franchises and doing it all as villains, but he's capable of so
Infinity
much
Stones.
more. Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I like about him as Charles Xavier is that Charles Xavier would give him that opportunity to show a sort of like softer side, right? A kind of an intellectual, but like a caring mentor figure. But Professor Xavier also always thinks he's doing the right thing, but oftentimes isn't actually doing the right thing and plays in the moral gray a lot more than people who don't read comics realize. So I think that he could play
Totally.
those elements of the character as well. And that's something that we haven't really seen in the movies. And I think that the character, if we're going to go back a third time, we need to have a fresh take. And I can't think of anyone better than him.
Dang, well
Giancarlo.
said.
Also, too, like I haven't seen Giancarlo in a role where he's bald, and I'm excited for that because he's got some. Back in the day, like his hairstyles have been pretty fantastic, but to see him go straight bald, I'm about it.
It's true. He's always really tight, but never totally bald. So
Yeah.
he could totally pull it off, though.
I like it. I'm all for it. Especially, I saw some fan casts too for I think it was like Denzel Washington as Magneto. Like I'm like, I'm not
Ooh.
mad at that. I think that'd be pretty
Yeah,
fun.
His
that'd be pretty cool.
Denzelisms as Magnetos.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right. I'm gonna. You met the master of magnetism, or whatever. Something like that.
And listen,
Uh,
he's gonna be the new Gladiator, so he's all in the sequel game right now. So why not? Let's get him in an X-Men
True.
movie.
Yeah,
Wow, I
yeah.
didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, Drake, I think you got the next one.
All right. So, where would you say that your love for Marvel slash superheroes started? What is your origin story as it pertains to, being involved with comic books and superheroes and things of the such?
Yeah, so my answer for this, I think, is very indicative of a lot of millennials. I've actually, on Bill versus the MCU, we oftentimes do interviews, and that is one of my questions for people. And the answer so often is the same as mine, which is that Fox Kids block
Oh,
of animated
duh.
series that we grew
Oh,
up
yes.
watching in the
Yep,
90s,
yep, yep.
X-Men, which now is back for X-Men 97, right? The Spider-Man animated show as well. Beast Wars, I loved Beast
Oh
Wars back in
yeah,
the
loved
day.
Beast. Oh, great call
Uh,
out.
and also, I have to be honest and say that for a long time, I really loved Power Rangers until I was about 11 years old. I held on way longer than most people I knew. And
Yeah.
so,
Till which ones? Till like Turbo, or I mean, they're at like
oh no.
dinosaurs right
Well,
now.
you got to go all the way through space at least, because that's when the real big kind of like Infinity Saga ending happens. But then
Yeah.
I stuck through Power Rangers Galaxy, even though I wasn't super into it. And then Lightspeed Rescue came out, and I was like, that's it. I'm officially
They
too old
lost
for
me.
this.
They're all just cars at that point.
Yeah. I didn't like it, broke with the continuity completely, and as a
Yeah.
continuity nerd, that really offended me, so I had to walk away.
Wow. You even had that idea back then, huh?
Way
That's
back then, yeah.
yeah, you were meant to be here and doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
love that.
because, the other thing that I grew up watching was like daytime soap operas. Like whenever I was home
Oh,
from school and stuff, like me and my grandma used to watch it together. And so like I love the idea of those like long, like decades long stories and generational stories and things like that. And that's what comic books give you also. And that
well
kind of
said.
like interconnected lore is so fun to dive into. And you don't really get to see storytelling on that long time horizon like you do with these stories.
That's
Would
very
you
true.
say that that was the days of your lives?
Well, I was a more of an ABC
Oh, okay,
soap
okay.
fan, so it's more like All My Children, One Life to
Oh, there you go.
Live, General
There you
Hospital.
go.
There you go.
Nice, nice.
Man, that's fantastic. I have heard a few people describe even X-Men 97 as like a soap opera with powers, and
Oh,
Oh,
I
absolutely. It's the
buy into it.
soapiest thing on TV right now. It's fantastic. Like, move over Bridgerton, X-Men 97 has you beat.
That's actually how I got my wife into it. So well said. Yeah, I was like, you're gonna love this. There's gonna be so much drama and fighting. Look at this thruple. Come on.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Evil
so
twins, people coming back from the dead. You got
Mm.
everything. I mean, it's perfect.
yeah, I know. Like the exactly where it's like, I thought this was my wife. It's not my wife. Oh my god, that whole thing. Oh man, I love that. I thought episode 3 they did such a great job with that. Now, so what would you say is the last full comic book run that you've read?
Well, my, like, dark secret is that I don't actually read comic books at all.
Gasp.
Bum bum
Really? Have
bum.
you ever read any comics?
Like, no, honestly. Like, one time I got an Iron Man comic book, digital comic book free for some reason, and I read that, and that was about it. Yeah.
Okay,
I've just,
okay,
like,
fair enough.
not. But what I will say is, I do listen to this incredible comic book podcast called Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, where, as they say,
Okay.
they walk you through the ins and outs of comics' greatest superhero soap opera. And they literally go through, like, issue by issue, every single issue in chronological order that X-Men appear in. And they started 10 years ago and in the 60s, and they're now in the late 90s. And so I feel like
Wow.
I've read a lot of comic books through them, but I actually haven't read any comic books at all.
Yeah.
Secondary
I've
comic
read a
book
lot
knowledge.
of Wikipedia articles though, so.
There you go. Yeah. My co-host on Challenge Accepted, that was the same thing. He's like, I'm not an expert, but I am a Wikipedia expert. So he's like, I know everything I need to know about Cassandra Nova, about Mr. Sinister, about Apocalypse, all from the Wikipedia page. And meanwhile, like I'm flipping back through the comic books. I'm like, oh, that's from this issue in 1995 or something like that. I was getting way too into the weeds, but okay, that's fair enough. And you know what? Doesn't mean you don't enjoy the content any less. I don't think that matters. But I will say, man, if you can read the new run of X-Men House and Powers of X, at least that. Oh my God, is it fantastic?
Yeah, well, if I don't do it now, I will at least hear about it on the podcast in probably another 10 years.
Right when they finally get there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well,
man.
definitely, it's worth it. Okay, Drake, you. I think you
Yeah,
got the
we
next
were
one.
yeah, we are talking about like we always kind of talk about like what would your superpower be? We're My Hero Academia fans. We definitely love to see how characters and especially the writers are able to kind of just to go back to X-Men 97, how they were able to really fully explore these powers in brand new ways, brand new choreography. What would your superhero name be, and what power would you want to exploit?
Name is hard. I'm gonna pass on name because if I
Okay.
give a half-assed name, I'll feel like embarrassed. So I'll have to come back to you on that. But my superhero power would be time travel for sure.
Ooh, interesting. How would it be like ultimate? Would you be like a Omega level mutant, or would you have like a weird like flaw? Because I know sometimes superheroes
Yeah,
sometimes have
well, so
weaknesses.
I guess if I'm really thinking it out, I would start out as just being able to travel through time at will, right? Like kind of like in
Oh
About Time,
yeah.
that Donald Gleason movie,
Oh,
Oh
that's a
yeah,
good
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
one.
not a
Yeah,
superpower movie, but it is about time travel. I would do
sure.
that at first, and then I guess like over time I would develop my power and eventually realize that I'm a reality warper because I think reality warpers
Oh,
are awesome, and I love
yeah.
all reality warpers.
That it sounds like you've read some
Sick.
comics.
Yeah.
Right? I can convincingly make you think that.
Yeah,
Would you have an
absolutely.
outfit, or would you be regular
Well,
dressed?
I guess once I get to my reality warping status, I could just have every outfit
Oh,
ever
that's
all
true.
the
Yeah,
time.
True.
So,
you can just
Oh,
change
okay.
but
outfit
Let's
at
say you
will.
could add flying into the mix.
Oh.
Are you going cape or no cape?
Oh.
definitely no cape. I mean,
Okay.
everyone
Okay.
has watched The Incredibles. They know you don't go with a cape.
Edna Mode does not approve.
Yeah.
No. But the
It's
thing that's
been.
great about time travel as a like superpower, number one, like you can solve every problem, right? And number
Mm,
two, you can also just take a year off and watch every movie you've ever wanted to watch, read every book you've ever
right.
wanted to watch, and then like step right outside your door and it's the next day. So
Wow.
that's
Yeah,
my dream.
I
Sounds like a
love that.
Neil Gaiman movie.
Neil Gaiman could definitely write my life as a time traveler. I would love that. I think he would do an amazing job. Uh, I had another time travel question. Oh, this is it. Do you think it would be like The Flash, for example? Like you try to change the past, but like every time you change it, you come back to the present. And now it's messed something up even more.
I
Mm.
mean, I hope I'm better at time travel than Barry Allen. I'll just say that.
Okay, okay. Because I feel like if I had the time travel ability, I'd go back and be like, okay, I want to redo this moment, screw up something else. Okay, let me fix that, screw up something even more. I think it just get
Yeah.
progressively worse for me if I had
Sound
that
like a
power.
Ashton Kutcher in the Butterfly Effect.
Right, right.
Yeah, where I have to eventually just kill myself in the womb to make it all stop.
Ugh,
No,
brutal.
I think that honestly, if time travel was real, it would mean that like you would be stuck in a time paradox all the time, where like time travel would have had to have happened already in order for
Mm,
you to be able to do time travel, right? So I feel like you'd always end up in a situation where you're not having branching realities. It's
Right.
just that like the necessity of you to time travel like requires the things to have happened in the way that they needed to happen. So that means
Yeah.
then you can't undo anything by accident, but you can use it as a tool to solve problems. It's just that you
Right.
always have solved those problems.
yeah. There was that
Wow.
I think it was on
Okay.
Netflix. They had that one show where it was like a detective show, and it involved time travel through three different time periods. I think in like the
Oh,
1800s.
bodies?
Oh
Oh,
Bodies,
yeah, I heard
yeah.
bodies.
that was a good one. I
Oh
didn't watch that.
man, it was real
Yeah.
good.
I watched a few episodes. It is fantastic. I liked it more than Three Body Problems, but I also have not finished it. And apparently it's based off a graphic novel, so there's that as well.
Double reasons to watch it.
Yeah, it was really good. Great cast.
Not a huge bar to clear to be better than the three body problem, though,
Oh
unfortunately.
dang. Okay, good. I'm glad you said it. I
Burn.
was having this conversation with someone also on Threads, and I was like, "Man, I'm really liking Dark Matter, which is like a new Apple TV show,"
Uh huh.
and they were like, "Oh, well, do you think is it better sci-fi than Three Body Problem? I'm like, yes, because I'm already caught up to date and I'm watching every episode. And they're like, great, because I gave up after the first episode of Three Body Problem. I'm like, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much me too. I
Yeah.
almost gave up. I mean, I pretty much did because I never finished it.
That's a show I wanted to like so much and just couldn't really. It was like I watched the first 3 episodes, waited 6 weeks, and then watched the rest of it. So that's always a bad sign.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then like around episode 4 or 5, it started to do things that I didn't expect, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe this is more than what I thought it was. And then it ends up ending in an even worse place than I would have thought. So I really felt deflated by the end.
Yeah. Oh man, come on, Benny Weinoff or whatever Game of Thrones guys. They just can't fix those endings, huh?
No, not at all.
Oh man, yeah. All right, well, I'm gonna save myself on that, but that's probably another pitch for me on the opposite side of watching Dark Matter. Really, really great. So let's see. So let's shift into the pop break for a little bit. Can you give us like the history of how this Cyan online magazine and then the podcast, like how did it all come to be? And then when did you join them?
Yeah, so it was created by Bill Bodkin, who is currently the editor in chief of the popbreak.com. He created it 15 years ago, and he basically started it as like a glorified blog with a few friends of his in his kitchen, and it kind of grew and it grew and it grew into what it is now, which is incredible. We have presences on both coasts, and we're
Yeah.
taking photos of incredible concerts all around the country, and we've got like a dozen podcasts. We've got all these writers, and we get to go to Comic-Con, and we get to these press conferences and stuff like that. So it's very cool. It's grown completely organically. Mostly everyone is doing it just because it's something that they love. We're not getting paychecks out of the process. It's a real labor of love sort of situation.
Awesome.
And it's really great. Like we've have a bunch of people started as interns through their local college, and then stayed on and kept writing, and then moved on into incredible jobs in media and entertainment, which is pretty cool. And yeah,
Wow.
so it's great. And I started there. Now it's probably like about 5 or 6 years ago.
Dang.
Someone that I was dating at the time, who I'm now still very good friends with, he was the TV editor and running the TV division, and he knew that I liked to write, and so we talked about me writing some pieces for there, and I started doing it, and that was fun. I did reviews of like every CW show for a while, which was, if you ever want to know
I
what I
heard.
thought about the pilot to Nancy Drew, you can look at it. It's on there.
Oh wow, you did those too? Because I listened to an episode and you were talking about the Flash.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like the Flash finale or what was it? The Crisis on Infinite Earth. That's what it was.
Yes. Yeah.
And
So
right.
my bright idea was in the lead up to the Crisis on Infinite Earths events that they had. I was going to do like a weekly column on every single, like doing like a roundup of all of the Arrowverse shows that were airing at the time. And there was always like 4 or 5 airing at once. And I thought, oh, that'll be fun. It'll be super easy, just like a couple of paragraphs on each thing and you move on. And what I didn't really have enough respect for is that every single episode of that show has like incredibly dense plots where because there's like an A story, a B story, a C story, and a D story. And
Yes.
just like recapping what happens in each, it was like 1,000 words per show. It was like, this is the
Yes.
longest column that's ever existed. It was exhausting. I would never do that
bet.
again.
I bet. As somebody who does we do a lot of show reviews and everything. For one of the weeks, we did every episode of the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action, and we did it
Oh, yeah.
episode by episode on this other podcast I'm on called Challenge Accepted. That weekend was exhausting. It was we were doing 3 podcasts a day. I was watching 3 episodes. I was like, I like the show, but now I hate the show because
Yeah.
it is so much. I can't even imagine having watched 4 episodes a week and then write something about it. Because you're right, those shows are very complex, more so than I think people give them credit for.
Yeah, they just are like plot engines. It's ridiculous how much stuff they can cram into 42 minutes of content. And I love them for that, but it's a whole different thing trying to like summarize it and also like have something to say about it and then like doing it for all of them at once.
Yeah.
I'll never do that again.
I bet.
And
Especially
that was
2
something that
paragraphs.
that was an assignment that I gave myself because by then I had graduated to TV editor because my was nice enough to give me the role afterwards.
Nice.
At least you got
And
something good out of it.
exactly, yes, and a lifelong friendship.
Oh, that's good too.
And then
Yeah.
as TV editor, I started doing some TV podcasts for the website because we had like some podcasting going, but it was pretty underdeveloped and it was sort of like event specific. Like something big happens, some people get on a mic and record. And so I thought, well, TV is such like a dynamic space. We could do like a bunch of shows. And so we started the Pop Break TV feed and started doing a bunch of different shows on that. And then from there, I just kind of talked my way into a new position for the site, which was the podcasting director position, and expanded from there. And now we have over a dozen shows across all different types of content, and it's really fun.
That's awesome.
Dang.
So
How do
impressive.
you- Yeah, how do you manage all that? I mean, that's a lot
Very
of stuff.
detailed Excel sheets for one.
Yup.
Lots of polite emails reminding people about their deadlines.
Per our last email.
Yes, exactly.
You have 22 minutes to record an episode.
Yeah. Starts now. I mean, I love the mantra of the pop break, which is essentially like we're the pop break in your day, and to have all these individuals coming together and really caring about the content because you're not necessarily doing it for money, right? You're doing it for the love of the
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
You
Nice.
cover so many different topics and pop culture as a whole, and it's growing every single day. How do you choose what to write about or do a podcast on? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, well, when I'm thinking about the network as a whole, I want to try to make sure that we're hitting different spheres of interest. So we have, for instance, we have a really great reality podcast called Roses and Rejections that is mostly centered on The Bachelor, but then when The Bachelor and its spin-offs are off season, they cover a lot of Netflix dating shows, which people love to
Nice.
hear about. Those are very
Oh, man.
popular.
I love me some Love is Blind.
Yeah.
I love Love is Blind. I'm not even ashamed of it. That show's fantastic.
Well, I've seen our numbers and a lot of other people do too. So
Perfect.
also The Circle is really big apparently.
Oh,
I don't watch any of these things, but other people do, and that's why I want to make sure they're covered on the network. So we have that. We have like Blurred Watchers is this great show that focuses mostly on like that nerd content that everybody loves so much, and that was something that I thought was really important to have on the site because based off of our existing people who participate on the site, people who read and listen to stuff on the site, right? They all love that stuff. So we have to have a dedicated source of content. We started an anime podcast not too long ago because so many people who work on the site love anime deeply. It was like we need to have like a dedicated space, partially so that way my TV break co-host Josh Renecki stop talking about it on our TV podcast because which has been unsuccessful. He still does, and we love it for him. But now he has a whole other place to talk about it too. So
Yeah, you're
th-
like,
it's
get it all out over there, okay? And then when we come back, we're going to talk about whatever, the MCU or Fallout or something like that.
exactly. But yeah, so it's a balance between what we want to cover as a site and then what the people who are in our lives and who we have connections to want to actually work on. So it's a big deal because people are doing it as a labor of love. So they have to be engaged and interested. And that's been a fun way that I've recruited other people to join the site, people that I've never met before that I just kind of find on the internet. And I see that they have a podcast that is kind of like, it's struggling to put out regular episodes, but I listen and I hear that there's something there and I say, hey, come do a monthly podcast with us. And it's pretty hard to do a weekly podcast, as you guys know. But as a monthly commitment, once a
me tell
month,
Yeah.
it's pretty manageable, especially when you have somebody being like, hey, remember, I need that by Tuesday. So I think that it ends up working well where people feel like they're getting to do the thing that they already wanted to do, but within the confines of a community where then we can go on each other's shows and we can kind of grow each other's audiences and things like that. So
That's
very cool.
beautiful. We should add another comma after director of podcasting and add talent development.
Community manager.
Yeah.
yeah.
Per our
No.
last email.
Not per last email. Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I'm kind of like, I just think that's wonderful because you're right. That there's a lot that goes into podcasting that I don't think people realize. It's not something we even talk about a lot on here. You know, it's like our main focus is to talk about the things that bring us joy. And yes, we do talk a lot about what's popular, but I think we go off the beaten path from like our normal sphere too. And it's just beautiful to have a space to do that. And it's really nice that you're allowing other people to have that opportunity too. I think that's really, really incredible.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. I mean, it's great for me as well. I love being able to have this as like a place to be creative and a place to meet interesting people and to just, feel like we're really growing something that's exciting and that's intimate at the same time, which is tough to do. So,
Yeah.
and it's nice I'm able to provide some of that infrastructure for people. Like some of our podcasters, they edit all of their stuff. They just send me a finished file, and that's wonderful. But other people, they don't have a background in audio editing, for instance, and so they'll just send me their edit notes, and I'll take care of the edit for them. And
Nice.
things like that is helpful. It helps keep people engaged because if you cut down the workload for people who are working for free, they're more likely to come back.
Well, let
yep,
me
yep,
tell you, I have learned a few things. So if they need any help, you can also send them my way because this was trial by fire on a lot
yeah.
of stuff. So I completely get it. You're doing an amazing job. I really only have to edit this one, and I can't even imagine having to do more. I'm already at my wit's end with this. So kudos to you. That is incredible. So how many other podcasts do you think you're like listening to or like looking out for every week?
Oh man, I'm a podcast junkie. I started listening to podcasts in 2009, so I've been like here early and often. At one point, I was listening to close to 50 podcasts on a weekly basis. I had to cut that down because it was just too much.
Yeah.
But now I'm probably at around like 30, 35 podcasts.
Wow,
Some of those I don't listen to every single episode, but I still would
Right.
listen to them at least twice a month, or else they get the cut because I'm very
Yeah.
vicious with that.
Right. Oh, you're cutting it. Okay, because I know that
Yeah.
Apple's doing that thing now, where it's like if you don't listen for like 2 or 3 episodes, you don't get the automatic download anymore.
Oh, interesting. I've been off of the Apple Podcast app for a long time because it
There
has
you go.
always been terrible.
Yes, the real ones know. That's like a if you know kind of situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are definitely man. They're still the big dogs though. It's like you have to feed them the treats because that's where like a massive audience is. But
So
I
yeah,
love it.
I was listening to podcasts when you literally had to download them on iTunes and then upload them to your iPod. Like
Dang.
that was when I started listening. So
You're like, how do I convert this into MP3? Okay, I
Exactly.
did it. Now I can put it in iTunes. Yes.
you're just
Oh,
like
that's
waiting for
impressive.
this sync to be completed. And you're like, I really gotta go, and it's like taking forever. This
Right.
feels like it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. I remember those. What was it? It wasn't Napster. It was post that like LimeWire.
Oh, yeah.
something?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the LimeWire. You're like, okay, I found the album. I like. Oh, okay, it's only gonna take 5 hours to download it. Okay, I'll come back and then I'll enjoy my favorite album or whatever. Back in the day.
And then what happens, like I remember so many times I would do that and I'd like set it up to do it while I'm at school, right? Because I'm like in high school, and then you come home, you're so excited, it's been going all day, right? It must be done, and you open it up and it's like absolutely not what it said it was at all.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
3%.
Oh my gosh, that's
just
hilarious.
like,
because I've been
why
there
is
so
this-
many times.
Yeah, why is this just like a weird mixtape of like Eminem and like Barnyard Animals? That's not the new Dave Matthews Band album.
Dang, more like Dave
exactly.
Matthews Barn.
Yeah, 100%. There was all these like emo bands back in the day that I loved, and yeah, you to your point, you download for 10 hours. My computer is about to like melt a hole through my wall, and I open it like, yes, it finally did it, and it's like nothing like what it said. It's just scratches of nails on a chalkboard or something.
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember those days. That's amazing.
Kids today, they'll never understand.
They'll never get it. They'll never get it.
They don't know perseverance. They don't know
Exactly.
patience.
Our grandparents may have had to walk uphill both ways in the snow, but we had to spend 10 hours downloading an album that wasn't real.
Yeah, exactly. These kids just get Taylor Swift straight to their phone now. They
Yeah, I
don't have
know.
to download anything.
They just wake up and it's there. It's so ridiculous.
It is. It's crazy. So that makes me wonder, like, what is your favorite podcast then?
Oh.
My favorite
what's like a
podcast
top
is so my favorite my favorite podcast is definitely Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men because I think what they do is incredible. They give you like the dramatic content of the issue that they're covering. They also layer in a level of history both inside of the comic book and then inside of the comic book industry, which is meta to that, and they add like an academic level of criticism to it, all while being fan focused and like not feeling like they're talking down to you. They do their own voices to perform some of the dialogue. It's such an
Wow.
incredibly like engaged podcast. It feels like something that just like came from like I wished it into being because it's so what I want from something. And then when I first started listening to it, I was like, well, surely there's like a bunch of comic I could learn about Spider-Man this way. I could learn about, and like
Yeah.
no, they're the only ones who do it like this in just this way. So I love them so much. They're definitely my favorite.
Man, what a great premise. You just gave me the idea to start a Spider-Man one just like that now.
I would also shout out Blank Check with Griffin and David. I love Blank Check with Griffin and David. It's a film podcast where they
Okay.
focus on filmographies of directors who, as they put it, are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion product that they can come up with, and then they see if the
Wow.
check bounces or not. And so it's pretty cool. It's a great way to kind of just like deep dive into an auteur filmmaker, and they've been going now since like 2016. So they've covered a lot of really great filmmakers.
Yeah. Wow. Man, are there any filmmakers left for them to cover? It's like it seems like they probably have done all the best. Like they literally have to come out of school for them to find somebody at this point, I would assume.
Yeah, no, you'd be surprised. I mean, there's just so many people. They have kind of expanded their like criteria for people, so they're not like they started out doing people like M. Night Shyamalan, like James Cameron, like people who had this like crazy huge success, and then they could just do any movie that they wanted afterwards. And sometimes you're James Cameron and that works out great, and sometimes you're M. Night Shyamalan and it doesn't work out so well.
Yeah.
but they've expanded to other filmmakers who are just interesting to talk about and who had interesting careers, and I think that that's good for the show because then you can go so many different places.
Yeah. So many amazing podcasts out there. There's so many great ideas. It's like it's just about finding them at some point. And
Yeah.
yeah, I love that.
One of my favorite podcasts that I just started listening to, like as a new listener, is this uh, podcast by Derek Thompson called Plain English. And he's a writer for The Atlantic. And he, in under an hour, manages to like talk about an interesting topic that's like in the news, but not just like ripped from the headlines, just kind of like, and gets like a thoughtful guest on to talk about it. And like from like the NBA deal that's going on right now with like the TV rights and like how that has to do with the kind of streaming movement and the way that broadcast TV is in decline, all the way to like he did like a two-part special on Ozempic, uh, which is a
Very nice.
dietary drug that's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
huge right now.
I know. I was like, so did South Park, I think.
I think his coverage is a little bit more sober-minded, and then
Right.
also things like from the news, like the Middle East and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting kind of like grab bag of topics, and he always gets an interesting person to talk to, and he really interrogates them in a way where it's like his premise is always like, here's what I think about this. Help me understand why you think the way that you do about it. And then he'll kind of push back and engage. It's not just like letting someone monologue for an hour, but it's
Mhm.
also not in a sort of like edgelordy, I'm going to debate you sort of way, which I,
Right.
you
I'm
know,
trying to make you look
learned a long
stupid
time ago
now.
to lose. I don't have any patience for that anymore. So it's
Right.
I really recommend that from like a current events sort of podcast.
Wow, that's
Oh
cool.
man, that's awesome. I'm definitely gonna subscribe to both of those now because I feel like you completely sold me on it. Wow, that sounds so good. One of them though, I feel like the X-Men podcast is kind of similar. You do a podcast called Bill versus the MCU, and there's a
Yes.
lot of explaining. I feel like that you have to do with Bill, who's not really an expert in X-Men. When and why did you guys start this one? And let's see, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like it shifted from other podcasts into this one. Is that what it is? Or is that because there's other podcasts on that same feed?
Yeah, so there's other podcasts on that feed. That's a podcast that comes out the second Tuesday of every month. It used to be
Okay.
on the podcast on the Pop Break Today feed. We've kind of done a merger of our Pop Break TV and Pop Break Today feeds into one big feed called the Pop Break. More simple branding.
There you
Uh,
go. Helps
and
me out.
And so that podcast started in 2020, well, in late 2021, actually, as an idea that then we started in January of 2022. And basically, it was because on Socially Distance, which is the Pop Breaks weekly pop culture podcast, which Bill Bodkin hosts, they oftentimes were doing these week to week rewatch, or no, week to week deep dive reviews on the latest Marvel TV show on Disney Plus. But Bill had not watched like any Marvel movies since like
Black
Civil
Panther,
War
right?
at
Or
that
something?
point. Yeah,
Yeah, he
Black
was like,
Panther.
I just
Yeah.
watched Black Panther, and he was like, and then I saw Endgame, and everybody, or like he's like, at least people were talking about it, and they were freaking out, and he was like, I can't just jump into Endgame, so I haven't watched
Yeah.
anything. And I was like, what? What did he just say? Like I was flabbergasted, especially when it said MCU in the name. I was like, no, no. So, anyways, I was happy that you were kicking this off with him.
Yeah, so basically, I finally sat him down. I was like, look, you can't keep reviewing all of this Marvel content without actually seeing the other stuff. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I'm going to create a show where I make you watch this every month. And he was like, okay, fine, because that's how he is. He's always happy to play along. So that's what we did. And we, in 1 year, watched all the first 4 phases of the MCU in monthly installments, which was crazy to try. And we did it, and it was wonderful. And that was our first season. And then I decided that I really wanted to keep it going because I love talking to him about Marvel stuff every month. And he was like, "Okay, sure." So I created a 6-year long plan with an Excel spreadsheet to match, where we would cover everything through Secret Wars. And what that meant was doing a lot of Marvel MCU adjacent content along the way. So our second season was devoted to the Defenders verse over at Netflix. We did
Yeah.
the first 2 seasons of Daredevil. We did the first season of Jessica Jones, the first season of Luke Cage, and the first season of Defenders. I always say I didn't make Bill watch Iron Fist because I'm not that mean.
Oh, it'd be so funny. I was like, and then you left out Iron Fist. Okay, got it. And that was
Yeah.
the right choice. So good job.
Absolutely. And then after that, we did a season on the first 4 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan.
like
Sometimes I
that
felt like I was
show.
the only one. So that was wonderful. I loved getting to expose him to that. And I turned him into a fan too, partially because I only gave him select episodes from each season. So he had a kind of like VIP exclusive version of the show.
Right.
But
You just got like the main course every time. It was like, I give you all these appetizers and I give you like first course, second course. No, you just get the main course. Like, this is all the stuff you
Exactly.
wanted to eat anyway. So it's fine. Yeah.
And we skipped season 3 altogether because I don't really like season 3, but we did watch all of season 4 over 3 installments, so that was cool. And then this past
season. Oh, sorry. Which season was the one in Agent Seal where it was like a time warp? Was that season 5?
that's
where-
season 5, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's where it does kind of get really squirrely, and they're like, "We're not doing anything the MCU's doing. We're going to do our own thing." But I agree with you. I really liked up to season 4. I thought it was so good.
Season 4, I think, is one of the best seasons of genre TV, period. There's a lot of up and down you have to do to get there. And honestly, in my rewatch, I was pleasantly surprised that there was a lot less down than I kind of admitted to myself there may have been in retrospect. When I actually watched it, it's like, no, this is actually pretty good straight through. Like, there's the season 1, it's a little rocky, but season 2 is really strong. And, season 3, I rewatched it even though I didn't make Bill rewatch it. And there was more stuff there that was worth watching than I remembered. But then season 4 is just incredible. It's an incredible season of TV.
It is, yeah, definitely. That became my nightly watch. Like, the wife went to sleep, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll put on Agents of Shield." I'm like, "The show's pretty good," and I'm like, it was way more connected than I realized to the MCU, and I'm like, this is really good. Like, there's a strong cast to it. Some of these stories are really fantastic. Do you ever think that the MCU is going to give it the nod? Like, yes, it is canon. What are your thoughts?
I thought for a while there was a chance because it seemed like Kevin Feige was slowly letting everything be canon. But then I read the book Reign of Marvel Studios by
Yeah.
Joanna Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, and what I realized is that Kevin Feige hates everything that came out of New York in the New York division, and anything that has anything to do with Joss Whedon, which that show unfortunately does. And so I think
Right.
absolutely, positively, no way that's ever happening.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah,
And I'm okay with that. One of the things, so I had the opportunity to interview a bunch of guests on that season of the show. Nobody who was worked on the show directly, but people who covered the show, who love the show contemporaneously. And one of the things that I always ask them was like, do you care if it's canon? Like, do you want it to be canonized? Do you want these people to come back? And to a person, every single person said, no, it doesn't matter if it's canon. It stands on its own. It's a good experience. It doesn't matter if it's connected or not. And no, I don't want to see it continue because I think that where it ends is great. I think that we shouldn't take the characters off the shelf and play with them again. Like we should just let the story stand for itself. And I agree with that, honestly.
Wow.
I like that. I really do like that approach because you're right. It doesn't matter if you enjoyed it for what it is. That's great. You know, you could give your own headcanon for it. Like it was a branch timeline or whatever. You know?
Yeah. Trust me. I've been on the Reddit. I've seen it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's where my brain went right away. But yeah, that's so cool. That's awesome. And you should just love a thing because you love it. That's so
Yeah. And so this current season of Bill versus the MCU, we're gearing up to Deadpool. So we're doing all of the Fox mutant movies. We did the first trilogy, we did the prequel trilogy, we did the unofficial Wolverine trilogy, and that was a wild episode, as you can imagine.
As those movies got pretty wild and went
Yeah.
wibbly wobbly and like
And-
some
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
some bad. You're like, what is the vision here?
Yeah, I mean, those movies are varying quality for sure. It's like one terrible one okay one, and then one great one. The one thing that they have in common is that they absolutely do not take place in the same universe whatsoever. So,
right. Yeah, for people making that argument, you're like, there's no way. There's no
Nope.
the physics in this world doesn't even match Logan. Like, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I agree. That's awesome.
and I watched them all in a day for the podcast, and that was a weird
dang.
day for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You watched
Roller
all
coaster
the-
of emotions.
Yeah, I did. At least the good thing about that is that you end on a real high note. So,
That's
it's not
true.
always the case with the random set of 3 movies. So, that's good.
That's right. Okay, 3 movies. That's right. Wow. Impressive. Very
Yeah.
impressive.
Oh, and I should also say we did what I dubbed the Disney discarded double feature of Dark Phoenix and New Mutants.
Yeah.
That was a fun experience. It did lead me to a YouTube channel that had that claimed to get the inside scoop on what the original Dark Phoenix story was going to be, and that it was going to be a 2-part epic movie and all this
Right.
stuff. And I don't know if any of that is real or not, but it did sound a lot better than the movie that we actually got.
yeah. And they're like, the aliens were gonna be Skrulls, but then they found out the MC. I think I watched the same video and I was like, I like that. I'd buy that. Okay, that makes sense why that movie wasn't as good. You know, kind of
Yeah.
justifying it. Although in that movie, one of the coolest things that I've always kind of waited to see, and now I believe X-Men 97 has done it, which was Cyclops do the ricochet shot that he's been doing in the comics forever. And it was
Yeah.
like the first time seeing it live, and I was like, see, it looks cool. They did it. I was so happy about that. I was like, this movie's great. I don't care what anybody
Yeah.
says. I
Too
love
bad they
just
did it
for
in
that.
the one movie that no one knows exists.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What were your thoughts? Just quickly, we'll have to send everybody to your episode to listen to it. But like, what was your take on Dark Phoenix and New Mutants? Like, if you had to give it a numerical score and like maybe like 1 to 2 sentences, why?
So, Dark Phoenix, I saw it in theaters, and I was just so upset because I love the character of Jean Grey. I love the Phoenix arc, right? I think that it has such tremendous potential that was obviously wasted in The Last Stand. And so then we got a second chance at it, and I was a big fan of the prequel films. Like, I thought that they were really fun, and I at the time even liked Apocalypse, although on that rewatch I liked it significantly less.
Totally.
But in the moment
Especially
I
knowing
was on
Oscar
board.
Isaac now, right? Like you're like Oscar Isaac, Moon Knight, and Dune, and all these other fantastic movies. Oh, Ex Machina. You're like, yeah, they didn't utilize him the best.
They didn't utilize him well, but no one can give a superhero a makeover in the background of a shot like Oscar Isaac can in that movie. So at least there's that. But yeah, so I was really looking forward to that movie, and even when I had heard it was bad, there were bad reviews, I still I was like, but surely it can't be so bad. And then I watched it, and I was just crestfallen. I was so upset. But rewatching it outside of that context, and just in the context of watching all of these movies in about 5 months, what I found was like it's not that bad. You know, like they're trying to do some things that are interesting. It tells a pretty good story of Professor X, which I liked about him
Yeah.
kind of having to confront his hubris and his arrogance and having real consequences to that. It's a still a very bad Jean Grey story because it's like Jean Grey goes crazy because she has all these powers, and then all of the men in her life have a lot of feelings about it. It's like, well, that's absolutely not the way to tell this story. Come on, guys, what are we
Right,
doing?
right.
So
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of bad to it, but it at least is a good. It is weirdly a good ending for that James McAvoy Professor X character, and that's something that I didn't really give credit for. Like back then. So if you're watching all of them, if you're like, I want to watch all these, I would say don't skip it. You know, it's not going to be your favorite. It's not the best, but it's not the worst of all of the films. Like I once thought. That is definitely X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
I
X-Men Origins
100% agree.
Wolverine.
There's no contestation there. That's
Yeah.
100% correct.
And the New Mutants is just like a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
It's like it just feels very bland. It's
Yeah.
like the most generic way to tell that story, and it's a shame because they had a pretty strong cast
Oh my gosh.
and
And you
they
tell
had a
Joy
good
is
idea.
magic? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what they do with her is just like I think she's weirdly like I think that's her worst performance, honestly. And it's poorly written, so it's not all her fault, but I don't think
Yeah.
she's helping matters. But it's a great but it's yeah, it's just a total mess. But it's not like interestingly bad, it's just boring. And it
Right.
feels like almost like a rejected CW pilot, you know? And it's like
That's a great description. Yeah, yeah, it very much feels like that. You're like, they could have. Yeah, it has a CW quality to it. You're like, this is an X-Men movie. Like, come on. The original
yeah.
idea where they were going to turn it into like a horror film and everything, and you could
Yeah.
see elements of it. They're like,
That's
they
what.
should have leaned into that because that
Yeah.
would have been awesome. That would have been
Yeah,
really
well, the
cool.
director agrees with you. If you listen to our episode, I go into it in depth. I won't do that here, but the story of how that movie was and was not supposed to be a horror movie is very interesting, and I think people don't entirely know the story, and I love telling people because it's so weird how what happened there. So listen
Yeah.
to the episode to find out the details.
We will link it in the show notes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are running a little long here. Drake, why don't you fire away with the next question?
Well, we were sticking to X-Men in general. From your Saturday morning adventures podcast on episode or on the finale of X-Men 97, it kind of seemed maybe a little bit disappointed with the finale. A, how did you feel about it? B, what would you have changed about that finale episode?
Yeah, so I was mixed on the finale because I felt like they set up a lot of stakes for these characters that we really invested in, like the Rogue arc, especially, and the Bobby arc, and all this stuff. There was this big schism between these characters, right? The X-Men break up, and then basically between episodes, all of that just like goes out the window and everything's fine now. And it just was kind of unsatisfactory in that way. Also, the choice to use Phoenix as like a Deus Ex Machina and then like
Yeah.
immediately be like, and now she's gone. It's like wonderful. That's great. That solves all of her problems then. Like all of that was lame. I was disappointed by Sinister just getting foiled in the way that he did because I feel like
Yeah.
he's the sort of character who like always has like plans and backup plans and triple backup plans. And for him
Right.
to just be like, oh no, you double crossed me. Oh no, now you've made me look ugly and I had a backwards facelift and now I have to run away. Like, what is happening?
Yeah. That
Oh
was
my
Just
funny.
gosh.
it was a mess.
Yeah, I
And
do agree
yeah,
with
so
you when you were
that
saying
stuff didn't work. But what I
Oh
will
yeah.
say is what did work for me in the finale was the Charles and Magneto story. Like being inside of his mind, the way that they like truly love each other, and it felt like really like gay coded to me in a way where it felt
Oh,
like
definitely.
two old married gay men going to couples therapy and just working out their shit finally after being passive aggressive for the whole season. And I loved that about it. When like the wave of Magneto's trauma washes over them and Charles is like, hold on to me, I will protect you. It's just like
I'll never let
so
you go,
beautiful.
Jack.
I loved it so much. So that really saved it for me. But yeah, it was a mixed bag of a finale, unfortunately.
Wow,
Interesting.
okay.
Well,
Yeah, I love the way they kind of came out to each other too, I guess, in the beginning of
Yeah.
the episode. I thought that was really well done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of talk a lot about X-Men 97 as like this updated, nostalgic type of show. Something that was there in our past, but then completely like changed over time, just like how we do as human beings. What like movie or show or cartoon is doing, like a updated nostalgia the best now for you?
I mean, it's X-Men 97. Like,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
mean to
Makes
give
sense.
you a
Makes sense.
bad, boring answer, but that is it. Like, I can't believe how hard that show goes, how
Mm,
incredible the action sequences are, how it truly lives up to what the creators said they wanted, was like not to be a continuation of the show from the 90s, but be a continuation of how the show felt to kids in the
yes.
90s who are
Yeah.
now adults, which is a bizarre thing to try to do, but
Yeah.
they did it better than I
Yeah.
could have possibly imagined. So I
Yeah.
really love that about it, even though I have some quibbles about different things. But like the fact that I do is a testament to how incredibly well acted and written and directed
Hmm.
the show is, because I felt so deeply invested in Rogue telling everybody to go fuck off in the during that monologue in
Yeah.
episode 8, that I didn't want then to, like, in the finale, for her to just be like, now I'm okay with everybody again. Like, no, you made me care about that. Don't just drop that ball, like
Right.
when Jean is like, I don't know who I am, and I'm gonna make out with Logan, and then I'm gonna yell at Cyclops for having a psychic affair with the clone of me who he had a baby with. I was invested in that, and then for the second
Right.
half of the season, they just minimized Jean into being, her whole arc was like, will Cable accept me as his mom? And it's like, what? No, I was really invested in this crazy soap opera,
Yeah.
like four-way love triangle thing happening.
Right.
Like, don't
I
sell it out now. So
yeah. You're
it's
right.
like it's
I
a
did
weird
miss that.
compliment to the show and how good it is that I ended up, because when I started watching it, I had no expectation that I would be that invested in those characters or in their emotional journeys to have
Right.
that sort of like need for a payoff. I was just like, it's just going to be fun to hang out with these characters again and see what happens. And so the fact that they hooked me so much is a real
Mm.
compliment, even if I don't think they totally stuck the landing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I loved it. I feel like this was my explanation for everything. When you get a one season guarantee or whatever, like you go for broke. And my big thing, as you probably have heard, is they put so much of these different comic arcs and they condense them down in like one episode, like Inferno being one episode. I didn't like that. I thought
Yeah, me
Life
neither.
Death
Me
needed.
and my co-host Kay were very upset that Inferno was only one episode.
Right, because there's so much they could do there. There's so much they could do with life, death. But I did, in my mind, was like, okay, if you don't know what you're gonna do, you're gonna put everything you can in this. You're just gonna dump it in there. And I'm like, they did get to tell so many great X-Men stories, and I do appreciate that. But yes, there's things that I hope they call back to, or they get to dive into more in the later seasons. Like I agree with you. I think they just needed more episodes to really like just explore some of these things that they really set up well. But then they kind of left the hook dangling by the end of the season.
Yeah. And I would say if you're looking for another show, if you've finished X-Men 97, I think that My Adventures with Superman, which is currently streaming on Max, is a really
Yes.
good option. It's
Yes.
not quite doing what X-Men 97 was doing, but it's basically like, the way I've tried to sell people on it is like a Superman movie, a Superman TV show that makes you feel like you're watching a Spider-Man TV show. And it's like,
That's great.
I'm not huge into Superman. Like, I've watched his movies and stuff, but he's never been the sort of character that I feel like emotionally connected to and invested in that way. And this is the first time that I'm watching it that I really feel that. Like, I was a big Supergirl fan. I like the Superman and Lois show for what it is. But this is the first one where I was like, oh, this character can work in a totally different context and still be fun and still feel true to who the character is supposed to be and feel fresh at the same time. So I really like that show, and it's back for its second season. And the first two episodes are like very lore heavy, and I hope they kind of like don't do that for the whole season. The first season was a real nice blend of like character focused stuff and lore focused stuff, and it has kind of an anime bent to it, which I'm not an anime person, so I can't really speak to that with authority, but I can say people who have say it does, so that's good if you like that. But if you don't, it shouldn't be like an intimidating thing because I think it's really accessible to all audiences.
Yeah.
And Jack Wade is great as Superman and
So
Clark.
good. That whole voice cast. So I feel like we have a lot of the same comic book show taste. I will say that. Just seemed like your spiel is like, yes, I like that. Yes, I like that. Yes, I'm watching my Adventures with Superman. So yes, I think we have very similar taste when it comes to that stuff, which I think you have a great taste, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. You sound like you have great taste as well.
Definitely. Well, Alex, thank you so much. Yeah, you've been so generous with your time, and we're really don't want you to have to go over anymore. Thank you so much for making this happen. We want to give you the final words and everything, but there's one thing we asked all of our guests to say. Our show is called the Joystick Show or Schtick Show, and so we always say, would you kind of close it out by saying mahalo for sticking with us, and then anything else you want to say, and you can have the final words.
Sure. So, mahalo for sticking with us. I've been Alex Marcus, podcasting director of thepopbreak.com. If you're interested in thepopbreak.com, go to thepopbreak.com. If you want to see all the stuff that I do there, you can click on the podcast tab, see all the podcasts that I feature on, all the podcasts that I host, all the podcasts that I edit and supervise and produce. Lots of fun stuff for music fans, movie fans, TV fans, wrestling. We have a big wrestling imprint because Bill Bodkin, our fearless leader, is a big wrestling fan, so we've got a lot of wrestling content there. So you can follow all of that stuff. You can subscribe to The Pop Break on all podcasting platforms to listen to TV Break, which is a podcast that I host with Bill Bodkin and Josh Cernacki once a month. We talk about the ins and outs of the world of TV. If you're interested in streaming stuff, that's a huge thing that we talk about. We have a streaming wars segment where we choose which streamer had the best month in the world of streaming, and that's always fun to chart. Every so often I try to give Roku a shot in the arm, but it's never a winning battle.
Right.
You can also
That's very kind
follow
of you.
You can also follow Bill versus the MCU that we've talked about in depth. Saturday Morning Adventures is a show that I did for the first 10 weeks of its existence with Kay Anderson of Lost Spaces podcast. It's going to have a rotating series of hosts from now on. So we're going to have Amanda Rivas, who hosts the anime podcast. She's coming on as a host to cover the Bad Batch season finale, or series finale, which is going to be fun. Bill Bodkin is going to be on that feed talking about Bluey for a few episodes because he loves Bluey. It's his favorite. One of our other podcasters is doing a season on Owl House that's going to be spending the month of July covering that. So lots of fun stuff with Saturday Morning Adventures that we're excited about. That's our new baby that we're working on. So that's really fun. And yeah, Socially Distance is the only podcast really that we do that is on a separate feed. Comes out every Friday. I'm on that a lot. We talk a lot about nerd stuff. We talk about MCU. We talk about Star Wars. We talk about all that stuff. So definitely, we have a Bridgerton episode coming out this week that we're recording. We're excited about because I've been converted into a Bridgerton fan. Bill Bodkin is not a Bridgerton fan, but he is watching it and being a trooper as we make him continue to watch it. So that's been really fun. So lots of fun stuff. You can follow me on Blue Sky if you have that, at Alex Marcus. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Media Thinkings. And if you're interested in movie reviews from 6 years ago, you can check out Cinema Joe's because our archive is up and we did it for 6 years. So it's a lot of stuff over there.
Beautiful. Drake did his deep diving to find Cinema Joe's. So, yeah. But, all right. Thanks so much, Alex. We appreciate your time. All right. Mahalo and aloha, everybody.
The Joystick Show. The Joystick Show.